Hello, we
Hi.
are here to discuss The Reckoners. This game came out a while back and it's been sitting on the shelf. Finally got it to the table. It's a Kickstarter back several years ago. There's actually an expansion to it that's been released since then, which we'll get into here in a minute. But before we get into any more discussion on it, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell down there so you can follow along on all of our kind of lesser known games and all the new stuff too. This game is a 2018 release. It currently has a Board Game Geek rating of 7.7 and a rank of 1053. 1 to 6 players, 60 to 100 minutes. That's about right, I think.
About right, yeah.
Age 13 and up, probably. I mean, it's not anything that's that hard to pick up, but you know, it's got some complexity to it.
A lot to juggle, so yeah.
Yeah. It looks intimidating, but it actually is less intimidating than it actually looks. Designed by Brett Sobel and Seth Van Orden. Art by Miguel Coimbra. And is published by Nauvoo Games. This is, I don't see it on for sale anywhere, so it looks like it's out of print. There are a few copies out on Board Game Geek that are various countries. But this is the Kickstarter Deluxe version with painted miniatures, which we'll show you here in a little bit. The MSRP for this is like $150 or something like that. I've seen it on various sites where it was listed for Card House looked like it was the cheapest for $69.99, and it went up from there. But all of them were out of stock, so you'd have to look around to try to find this. Except for used copies, of course, on Board Game Geek. The expansion came out in 2022, so it's still actively being, at least new add-ons are still actively being considered. Steel Slayer was the name of the expansion, and that one has just as nice pieces, which we'll go right into quality components. That's what this thing shines.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you've got these. This is probably the best implementation of game trays I've seen in any game.
Yeah, everything fits. It's very well designed. They stack. Just very well done.
Yeah, and they're attractive. I mean, you got they went as far as to print these little skulls whenever the life meters of these anti-hero villains, or whatever you want to call them, goes down. So this is very much when we get to the theme, I guess we can talk about it now a little bit. It's very much modeled after like The Boys or any of the superheroes gone bad storylines you might have read in the comics. So, you're in a society where the superheroes basically took a control of the planet, and, they're dominating over civilians, and you've got a group of ragtag humans who are now fighting back against these oppressive superhumans. And, it's captured very well in this game. So all the pieces in this copy, the deluxe copy, are metal, which is really cool. All the tokens for your meters, they're actually metal. The coins are metal, which they serve as kind of wild tokens. The pieces are not; these are not metal, although there is a metal copy of the main super villain in it that you can play with, or you can use. They have one that's a painted version.
Put them right beside the. You can kind of see they're exactly the same. Just one's in metal, and then one's the painted version.
So yeah, and then all of the pieces, every one of them's already painted, so there's no work to be done there, except for like these little. Henchmen, if you will, the enforcers. They they look like standard like Axis and Allies figures, but it's really the game trays that just shine on this. The functionality is really cool. They have like the main villain's board. He has basically a shield, if you will, where you have to discover his weakness and you have to beat that meter down. And when you do, you just lift it off. And underneath is his life meter. That was super clever and well implemented. They've got slots for all of your dice that you standardly will use, although you can get more dice, but you're not limited to those. But they have 6 slots on every board for sticking your dice in. It's really well implemented. The card stock, they had sleeves already in this version. They do have a slight linen finish. They're pretty good stock. They're a little curling as far as trying to get them into the card sleeves, though. That's the one disappointment. I think they were already curling in the seal before he opened it. They did have stickers for the barricades, which I hate stickers, anything where it's a project. But there was only a handful of them. I think there was a total of 16 stickers you had to apply. It wasn't too bad. I think it took you longer to sleeve the cards than for me to put the stickers on.
Yep.
So, as far as quality components, the dice. The dice are very chunky. They remind me of the Dinosaur Island dice. I'm not a huge fan of that style because it's like the icons are just painted on. So they may scratch off. I'm not sure how easily that'll come off.
Could. The one thing that I would add is, as for people that have having eyesight problems or something like that, these dice will do very well because it's very easy to see.
Yeah.
And they're very big. That you can tell this is not an average size dice. So there is that going for it. I mean, there's the like I said, these are just printed on plastic. But by and large, it works with the way the game is. Easy to get a hold of, easy to see. Because one of the things when you're in gameplay, it's not just your dice. You need to be seeing everybody else's dice and everybody seeing yours because you're working together.
Yeah.
So that size works in multiple ways.
Yeah. And they are see-through dice. They come in various colors that match to the player colors. Mm-hmm. Although there are cards that let you get dice that are not necessarily in your player color, which I thought that was really cool. All in all, I think they've knocked it out of the park with this.
Absolutely.
To detract from this, I almost want to give this a 10. I'm probably going to give it a 9.5 just because I'm not a big fan of the dice, but it's right up there. It's an amazing implementation.
I got to give it a 10. I think they just maxed. They kicked it out of the park. They could have done. There's other little things they could have done, but that would have added significant cost and probably not significant additive. Like for instance, these little red henchmen. That's just standard injection molded part. But to do anything more than that would have added a lot of cost without adding any real playability or something. So the cost decisions that they make, they really did a good job.
Well, what the purpose these things function, you typically would just see a cube or something.
Yeah, right.
They actually made them be figures. Right. Mm-hmm. So and we didn't even mention these are metal too. These markers that it's like a slide thing where they mark and identify where on the track things will trigger. This was really clever design because you have to take these boards out, and depending on different player counts and different abilities, these will switch out, but the meters go back in, and you can just slide them up and down. It's very well done. And I like the chunky metal.
Yep.
So moving on to theme, this is a very cool theme. I watch The Boys. I think it's a really cool show. I used to watch one of my favorite comic series of all time was the Squadron Supreme series in the Marvel comics. I really would like to see them make a good movie out of that because I think they could, but they'd probably get in trouble for ripping off DC because it's basically Marvel's version of the DC superheroes.
Yeah.
But it's a planet where they took over and became corrupt, even though they were the heroes. This captures that feel so well. And you've got a tyrant superhero that is the kind of the main boss. It is their version of Superman, if you will.
Yeah.
And then you've got all these henchmen superheroes that each one manages a sector, and you have cities that are city areas of your town that are managed by those super henchmen. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, you've got enforcers who are standard humans who are basically forced into cooperating with the superheroes, and their ability is basically to pump up the henchmen, and the henchmen in many cases are there to pump up Superman or whatever their name of the character is. They've done an outstanding job of making this a tense situation where you're playing through, but the root of the game is basically a Yahtzee dice system. You're trying to get icons to trigger the things you want, but you cooperatively can discuss and roll, and you can play simultaneously, but you probably want to pause and kind of look at what your partners are doing to see what, make sure before you roll that you're trying for the same thing. There's a lot of coordination between you. There's a real good feel in this game as far as you're part of this world.
Yep, there's no such thing as table talk in this game. At least not illegal table talk. As a matter of fact, all that kind of talk is highly encouraged.
Yes.
But the more it would be, the more boisterous it would become.
Yeah.
As more people played this game.
Yeah, we played it with 2, but I think this would be outstanding with 6.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be a lot of fun with 6. It would require a lot of thinking and talking, and maybe we'll go after these. It would be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And they ramp up, based upon player count, the abilities and powers, and they have 4 different difficulty levels too, so you can decide, how tough to make it on yourself. We played the standard setting, and we looked at first like we were going to get slaughtered, but then we came back and won pretty handily.
Yeah, once we figured out what to do, it pretty much, we smoked it pretty good once we figured it out.
So I probably want to play it at the next level.
Yeah, just to see.
Yeah. I love that you got upgrades. The upgrades look powerful, and they give you some really cool abilities. And each one of the super henchmen have special abilities as far as they have different arrangements of icons that will trigger different things. And your life meter, if you will, is the population of the city, and you're trying to defend those people. So it makes perfect sense, and it's beautiful looking. I mean, all the painted figures, the metal, it just pops. It's just beautiful table presence, and just the design of the game trays, the way they look, and it's easy to get out. I mean, that was what's really nice about it. I thought this was
really easy.
With all the pieces, I thought this is going to be a chore to get out. It's not. These trays, you lay them out. It's very intuitive where things go. It's just
total setup time, even for a game with 6 people. And I realize you got real estate. If you're playing with 6, you're going to need some real estate. With a table this size, and the way I would also add that it would be difficult to use auxiliary tables simply because of the need for everybody to kind of see what everybody else is doing and kind of what they've got. So that would be the one caution that I would be. If you're going to play with 6, you need a big table.
Yeah. I mean, you could use the auxiliary and just say what you rolled, because I mean, these things are the only your personal player boards are really the only thing that needs to be off the table.
These dice need to be seen.
Yeah.
Like I said, that you have to be. There's a lot of coordination and collaboration that goes on with those. So that's just the one caveat that I would throw in about that.
So thematically, I'm probably at a 9 on this.
Oh yeah, easy.
All right, so moving on to the rule book. So the rule book, it's got a nice cover on it. The rule book is 24 pages, which sounds intimidating. It's not as bad. It really didn't take that long to get through the rules.
Iconography is good. Pictures, a lot of pictures, so it kind of walks you through the setup and the understanding.
A lot of it's also like the story setting.
Yep.
So there's a lot of, each character has their own little profile. You got the contents where it shows you pictures of all the contents in the game, which is good. I like that. It tells you how many there are. You've got basically the overview and the conditions, win and lose. The setup is numbered very cleanly, and you can tell where everything is supposed to go. And in most cases, you can look at the boards and just tell, this peg fits in here. It makes sense. That's the color matches.
Just that much more the design. I mean, the colors, the shapes, everything, it just made it very almost intuitive.
Yeah, and there's a cheat sheet for it that's really well done. It has the steps of the gameplay, the numbers down the side telling you which steps, all the detail references. And then on the back, most of the iconography, not all of it, but most of it's here. There were some icons on the cards that were not on there, and some of them were not intuitively in the rule book.
Yep.
So I think we have one card we had to look up online, but it wasn't bad.
I think it was from a Kickstarter promo bonus.
Yeah. And there was a little confusion at first about whether you could get the dice for the other characters' colors, but that you definitely could. The different icons are clearly defined in here with images and pictures and examples and everything you need to learn how to use them. I mean, this book is really well laid out. The only thing I had a little trouble with, which wasn't a big deal, is when it got to the turn order for the epics, they call them, the super villains. it went through and it kind of went through the steps, but then it skipped back to the cards for the heroes, but then went back to the iconography for the villains. I wish they would have paired them a little differently, but that's a minor thing.
Very minor.
All in all, I think this is a really good rule book. It does an excellent job. The cheat sheet is really well done. I'm going to give it a 9 too.
Absolutely. And you add in a little book there that you're showing that the Brandon, that Brandon Sanderson is the novelist. This is based on his books. He actually contributed, and for these epics as they're called, like for instance, this one's called Firefight.
Yeah,
you could look up the page in there, and it would give you a little more. If you wanted some more flavor, you could.
It gives you the backstory of all the villains. Some of these are apparently dead. They actually have a deceased listing on some of these. So if I've never read any of his books, but now I'm curious because it's got this backstory on all these. I might have to check out his books to see because I really love these kind of storylines. So so moving on to gameplay. So you start out with, depending on player count, you have one more city region than you have players. Right. So we had 3 city regions. You've got the main supervillains board. Now the expansion adds additional alternative supervillains, but the base game just comes with the 1. And then each player has a player board that has 6 dice, 3 of which are kind of a generic clear die where all the icons only represented 1 time. And then each player gets 3 dice of the color of their board that has 1 icon that's basically on one side doubled. And it matches, the icon actually matches the color of the board. So yours, because yellow or orange was the money side, you had 2 copies of those on all your dice. I had blue, which is basically the ability to reduce the power of the villains. I had 2 of those icons on my dice. So from that, you're going to, at the beginning of the game, first kind of have an initial prologue, they call it, which matches kind of a comic setup, where the supervillain is going to get moved from one location, and he's going to drop off some of these henchmen at these locations. The henchmen basically act to improve the supervillains at each of the locations' abilities if you don't get rid of them by the time that they trigger their actions. So you want to kind of maintain a low count of those because otherwise these guys become uber powerful.
Yeah, and what they do is when they become uber powerful, they make this guy even more powerful.
Yeah. So
it's a question of balance.
Yes. It's almost like you've got these supercharged batteries, and if you don't take the batteries out, each one, they charge more and more to this main guy, so they're all intertwined.
It would get, if you didn't pay attention to them, it would just get beyond control. So balance is really critical in this game.
So then after that, first thing you're going to do is, the start of the game, you get $4 you can spend for upgrades. And you got to decide who's going to get what upgrade, because it's $4 is a communal pool. So it doesn't matter how many players you got $4. And most of the upgrades will cost $2 or $3 at least.
1 to 3. There was a few that were 4.
Yeah. So you're going to have to save up if you want bigger things, but not everybody's going to get something. It's going to be basically one player is going to get an upgrade at the beginning of the game, pretty much.
It depends. With just 2 players, we were getting to where kind of we would trade. I get a card one hand, you get a card the next time. And then there was one time I think I managed to roll a bunch of dollar signs, and we bought like 3 upgrades that one turn. So it just depends. Yeah,
you're not limited on the number of upgrades in the game.
Right.
But then after that round, the card buying doesn't happen until the end of the round from that point forward. So you're going to start the game out. You're going to roll the dice that you get to start the game with. And typically that's 6 dice, as we mentioned. And you're going to each round have to at least keep 1 of those dice. And you can keep as many as you want, but you have 3 rolls similar to Yahtzee. But each time you have to at least keep 1. So I guess in that way it's more like Elder Sign. If you've played Elder Sign, it's got that same mechanic where each time you have to burn a die if you don't manage to pull off something. In this case, you get to keep the die and you get to use for an icon, but it may not be a very valuable icon to you in a given situation you're in. And you're on a given city location. You assign yourself at the beginning of the game to one of those locations, and you can, depending on your player, you may only be able to affect that location. You had a special ability where you could actually affect that location and another location.
Right, the character was a sniper, so I had a little chip I could put down so I could affect 2 locations, which came in quite handy.
Yes, that was super handy. Then after you roll and get all your icons, you can then spend those icons to trigger things, and you can do it in any order you wish between you and your partners. You can do it simultaneously, or you can do it in turn order, however you wish to do it. I would recommend the first couple times playing, you probably want to do it in turn order, or at least not necessarily a specific turn order, but I'm going to use this die, you use that die.
Right.
You'll probably find yourself wanting to do that anyway, because it just makes it easier to coordinate between you a strategy.
Right. Once you've done it, once you go through a few of these, it'll click as to which ones. Once you figured out your strategy for that particular round, it'll become pretty obvious. Which some dice you don't really have to wait on your other players to play them, because they don't immediately impact them, or it's part of your strategy, and you will have talked that through as you're deciding which dice to keep. So it actually play picks up. The more you go through this, you're able to get faster and faster simply because you understand how it goes. Yep. So my guess is probably by the second or third time you're playing this, it would move very quickly. And that's kind of one of the beauties of this game. It's not like you play your turn and then you play on your phone for 10 minutes while the other 5 people play. It's continually rolling, continually going the whole time. There's always talking, you're always thinking, you're always doing, because everybody's doing it together. So that's one of the beauties of this game. There's no on off like like you can't do with some games, where some of the games it may take 3 or 4 minutes per each person per turn, and by the time it gets back around to you, you have to re-engage with the game. So this is not an issue with this game at all.
So some of the abilities you can remove barricades. Barricades basically prevent you from being able to move into or out of a location. So you can burn any die, the icon doesn't matter, and get rid of any barricade at any location. That's the only ability that we found that will allow you to do something outside of the location that you're at, or in your case with the sniper, where you've decided to snipe. Yep. The other things, you can use a die to move to a different location. So you can spend any die to pick up and move to a different location. You can also use the icon itself. So one icon will give you one of the coins, which actually acts as a wild token for any icon you need it to be, but you can't use it until the next round. So you have to set that one aside. You can get money that you can add to your income to buy various upgrades at the later stage of the round. You can get magnifying glasses, which are very useful early in the game, particularly because you need them to scout out weaknesses for your opponents, or your super villains that you're fighting. So the super villains will have basically some health meter and a weakness meter, if you will. You can, in most cases, you can fight the hero or the superhero just by beating their health if you really wanted to, but their health will be something really high. It could be like 8 or 9.
And some of them, they start, their health is considered infinite until you discover their weakness. And then once you discover their weakness, they become very beatable.
Yeah. So I think most every time we didn't just pure beat them down. We just went ahead and found their weakness, because we got so many ways of getting those magnifying glasses. And it basically will cut their health, regardless of the situation, from whatever their high number is down to a more manageable number. So even the ones where you could attack them directly right away, you may still want to get rid of the purple weakness meter, because it'll take them from an 8 down to a 4 or something like that. You've also got the main villain who is traveling. He just randomly goes around from space to space in a circle, and you have to be at his location to fight him, but you can apply the same logic to getting rid of his weakness. That's right. You can't even attack his health until you get rid of that. Right. And it's at a really high number. So based on player count and your difficulty level, we were playing standard game at 2. So he's got a 20 meter for his weaknesses before you can even remove this and then get down to his health. And once you get down, you have to then change icons. Instead of going for the magnifying glasses, you have to get green skull icons. And that will knock his health down. And that applies to the others as well. In order to get rid of them, you have to get green skulls to knock them down completely to 0. And once you've done that, for these superhero henchmen, you can take them and you remove them, and they have a perk at the top. At the end of the round, you will get that perk if you defeat them. And you can defeat multiple of these potentially on a round and get multiple perks, which is really nice. But you gotta be careful, because if you used like your dice to do the icons that you're going to get from defeating it anyway, you're wasting icons. And you've only got your dice, you'll find, are very scarce resource as you're going through this. Yep. So you really don't want to waste any of the icons if you can avoid it.
Yep. A lot of tabletop comes in, and the collaboration comes into that to figuring out, okay, what do we need to do this? What do we need to do? And you're basically trying to maximize everything you can with that particular dice round.
And that's where at first we were getting slaughtered. It looked like it was going to be a very short game. And then we start realizing, wait, if we do this and this, we can combine forces and beat this guy, which will give us this ability. And then we can apply that to the main boss. Right. And if, like I said, if you're not careful, the compounding system they have will cause that main boss to become very powerful very quickly.
It'll make the game almost, you're going to be done. If you don't pay attention to balance, you get too many of these guys out there. The little villains get too strong. This guy gets too strong, and it would overwhelm you within 2 or 3 rounds. So you have to keep things tamped down, if you will.
And if any of their meters ever cap out and they get more additional of that type, then you lose population.
So you're that much faster.
Yes. So that population is in essence the life meter for your entire team. Mm-hmm. If it runs to 0, game over.
Yep.
So there's a lot to consider while you're playing this, but it's not it's not overwhelming. It's there's as you're playing through, it's all intuitive, and it's really well designed. As far as my thoughts on the gameplay, I'm probably at an 8.5.
Oh, easy, 8.59. Just very, very quick to grasp. Very. It's not a simple game, but it's not complicated. It's easy to grasp.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is at its root a Yahtzee-based game. So, if you've played Elder Sign, if you've played any of those kind of games, there's nothing new from that perspective, but it's very well implemented.
Absolutely.
And it will definitely look good as you play the game. It'll feel good. I still love Elder Sign. I think Elder Sign has more versatility than this. Even with the expansion added in, there's not nearly as much variability in this as what you see in Elder Sign. So if I were going to pick one of those kind of games, if I only wanted one Yahtzee-style co-op game, I would probably still pick Elder Sign. I still think it's the better game, but this one looks much cooler.
Agreed. I think the one thing where I could see, if you have this game or you wanted to get this game and play it, and we really like this, then maybe you could graduate to Elder Sign, because you've got the techniques and kind of a good plan for it. Because this game, like I said, it's just really, really easy to learn. It will not be a struggle to try to get through it. The setup was quick. So there's that to think about.
Yeah, but I also would say I would not want the standard version.
Oh no, I agree.
I mean, once I played it this way, I would not want anything less than this.
Now we're probably talking red cubes and black cubes and who knows what.
So, I mean, this one is beautiful, and I would not want to play it after playing it this way with anything less than these metal. I mean, I just love the feel of these metal markers.
Well, and it helps, towards you. Probably the standard one does. I don't know. It doesn't have these game trays. So you're talking flat cardboard, and you're trying to match it up, and it's probably your standard cubes.
I think it's still got a lot of these bits in it, because I mean it's still $150 for the standard.
Base game? Standard? Okay, then it's got a lot of.
Yeah, it's got a lot. It's a pricey game.
It's a pricey game, yeah.
But so it's still going to have a lot. I don't think it's painted. These are not metal.
Visually, it's just very rich.
Yeah. So it's definitely something that it's if you haven't seen this before, it's going to be hard to find. But it's probably worth the look if you are interested in these kind of games. I mean, I'm not a big co-op fan. I've said that many times, but I'm finding myself liking games like that are co-op that are more on the lines of Elder Sign. I've always liked Elder Sign, and this one is like that. So I really like this, and thematically, it's exactly my kind of theme.
Yep.
So that's my thoughts on this game. You gave basically the same score as I did.
Yeah, it's a good game. You're not going to go wrong.
All right.
Not going to go wrong.
So until next time, make sure you keep on finding these hidden gems yourself and share them with us. Make some comments down there. Let us know some hidden gems you found in either in your collection or at the stores recently that you just didn't know were out there and that were just outstanding. All right. Thanks. Bye.